Bonsoir à tous et à toutes. Good evening to everyone. Welcome to this very special evening. We are eager to start and to discover this ciné-concert. Please welcome the Ambassador of France, who would like to say a few words to this French series, which will be completely broadcasted. And then we'll go straight to the event and then to a special discussion with Ryan Heath and Serge Bromberg. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup Pascal. Cher Serge, dear Ryan, dear friends, I am both proud and grateful to welcome you to this ciné-concert, the first of its kind at the French Embassy. It is indeed an honor to commemorate the brilliant career of Josephine Baker, who last week became the first Black woman to be inducted into the French Pantheon. She is a symbol of the strong cultural ties between our two nations and proof that anything can be achieved with enough determination and passion. Cinema pioneer Georges Méliès was also a passionate creator. There is an anecdote that few people know. When the atrocities of the Great War made his illusions obsolete, he burned much of his work in a fit of anger. An invaluable piece of art had been lost. However, we recently had the great good fortune of some of his negatives being rediscovered at the Library of Congress. It is this story that is going to be told tonight. Reflecting the importance of both France and the US in the early days of cinema, this story is now being continued by artists and technicians in both countries who are reviving these magical pieces. Indeed, the films you are about to see would never have been screened without major restoration efforts by dedicated specialists. A director, producer, and television presenter, to highlight just a few of his many talents. Serge Bromberg is one of these specialists. He will introduce the history of these incredible silent movies, but he will also accompany them live on the piano. His skills and commitment to restoring and promoting vintage films are enormously valuable in helping us preserve our heritage. Thank you for your dedication, Serge. It is a real pleasure to have you join us, and thank you for coming from Paris, especially for this show. I want also to thank Ryan Heath, the prominent host of Politico's Global Insider, who took time out of his busy schedule to lead the discussion that will follow the screening. It is an honor to welcome you, dear Ryan. Finally, I would like to highlight the involvement of the National Gallery of Art and of the Library of Congress, which helped organize this event and gather you all here this evening. Your participation exemplifies the best of transatlantic cultural cooperation. I will now give Serge Bromberg the floor, or should I say the scene, so that he can restore the wonder. Thank you again for being here today.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, et welcome. I'm going to skip to English, of course. And I would like to say a few words first about the films you're going to see. We're going to pay a tribute to Josephine Baker, Georges Méliès, but also to, and most of all, to the stories of collaboration between France and America, which really brought a new dimension in cinema on many, many examples. Some of you probably know that because in the early days there were no archives, no cinematheque, most of the films shot during the first 60, 70 years of cinema have now disappeared. We consider that about 50% of the films that were shot since cinema was invented 125 years ago are now missing. They have not been kept. And David Pierce made a study about American silent feature films, realizing that only 10% of them do survive complete, which shows you that we are really, in the early days, it was like, we didn't keep films. When you buy a newspaper, you don't keep it and think, well, in 2 centuries, this may be the last copy of that newspaper. You just throw it away. That's what they did. So, the films you're going to see today were lost at some point and rediscovered by chance or by collectors or by archives. And every time there's a story between France and America. For example, the first film. I must warn you that some of the films may be a bit crazy, but they are all authentic. The first film is called The Wedding Night of Kalino. I bought a nitrate print in Canada, but because it was too among 150, because it was too complex to ship them to France, and because it's really part of a global collaboration between archives, I asked those films to be shipped to the Library of Congress, which was one of the nearest archives. They made the inventory and found that film in the collection, slightly incomplete, and said, this is the craziest film ever, you should watch it. So I watched it, they scanned it, and I realized that there were a few pieces missing. So that officially Library of Congress print was filled by 2 fragments of a DVD that were taken from another 16 millimeter print of terrible quality, but that's all that survives, the only other print at the George Eastman Museum. So, France, America, and so on. I must say that the head of the collections of the George Eastman Museum and the head of the film department of the Library of Congress are here in this theater today. So thank you very much. You should be proud of the film we're going to see. You should. Be proud now, because later it will be too late. The Wedding Night of Kalino. Kalino decides to marry. For those who thought that French cinema was Jean-Luc Godard, there has been other options. Okay, the second film is a film by Méliès, and it's one of his special effects films, but you know, it was shot in 1898. February 15, 1898, oh hell, what's the name? Slips my mind. The Maine, which was an American ship, was sunk in the Bay of La Havana, which started the Spain-America War. And of course, it was a trauma for the entire world. And Méliès had this idea to film the first newsreel ever. It's called The Sinking of the Maine, and you will see divers visiting the Maine. 1/3 of the crew died, and they reportedly found bodies on the boat. And Méliès recreated that scene in his garden with painted backgrounds, but literally, that's the first time a newsreel was shot. And furthermore, it is under the water. So Franco-American, here is Visite de l'épave du Maine, a visit of the wreck of the Maine, 1898. And it lasts 1 minute. Georges Méliès. Georges Méliès was the master of trick films, but we will see another Méliès films later. And now Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker was American. She came to Paris as part of La Revue Nègre in the early 20s and was instantly a huge success. In 1927, she was filmed in the Revue of the Folies Bergère. The film was a feature film called La Revue des Revues, and basically half of the film was filming the Folies Bergère numbers, and among those Folies Bergère numbers were 2 numbers by Josephine Baker. At the time, color film that did not exist, so the only way you could make a film in color was to hand paint every single frame with a brush. There's 22 frames per second. So at the end of the day, it would take months to hand color a film. The fragment you're going to see of La Revue des Revues, which is a feature film, was discovered in Denmark. It is fully hand colored. It's one of the 2 Josephine Baker numbers called The American Bar, and it lasts 3 minutes. The next film is Franco-American because it was discovered at the Motion Picture Academy in Hollywood. It's one of my favorites. It's also about dancing. We don't know the name of the choreographer, but we know the name of the main actor. His name was Al Santel, and he's the one who appears here as the pig. Yes, that film is to good taste what Gone with the Wind is for Hollywood super productions. It's unbelievable. It's 4 minutes. It's a music hall number shot as it was done on stage at the time. And it's called The Dancing Pig. Okay, from the Motion Picture Academy, The Dancing Pig, a French film. Where else? Our next film was shot in 1908 in England. It was found in France and restored in France. So what's the connection with America? Well, it was identified in America. We didn't know what it was. There were many options, but every year there is a congress with maybe 200 specialists who try to identify an identified film. It happens at the Library of Congress. It's called Mostly Lost. And by the way, one of the two heads of Mostly Lost is here in the room also. And yes, Rachel. Well, I'm glad that film could be identified. Here is Le Diable s'amuse, which is actually, and now we know it, When the Devil Drives by Walter Booth in 1908. The next film is France, filmed right after the First World War by an American crew for the Red Cross. Those images, we don't know actually where they come from. They were found at the UCLA Film Archive as part of the Black Hawk collection. We scanned them without knowing what they were, and they are so stunning that I wanted to show you those images. They are sincere. They are shot the American view on the situation of France right after the war, especially Reims, that was totally destroyed at the time with its cathedral. Playgrounds in sunny France, 1912. 8 minutes. Another way to collaborate between the American and the French. This is a very funny one, but at the time it was not funny at all. We're right after the war in November 1918, and of course, the French country is totally devastated. And the three main enemies are syphilitis, tuberculosis, and alcoholism. So the Rockefeller Mission, so American money, financed promotional films made in very primitive animation to explain to the population that they shouldn't drink, they should be healthy, they should clean up their mess, and all the rest. What? Did I say anything wrong? Okay, I almost did. So here are 4 films produced by Ogalo, the guy who designed the Michelin tire Bibendum character. Maybe you know it. And it's called Petites Causes, Grands Effets, Little Causes, Big Effects. And Victor is going to translate live as I'm playing the piano. There are 4 films. And remember, they may seem funny today, but at the time, this was serious business.
Small causes, big effects. A little glass of wine is not much. When you take it every day, you become an alcoholic. 8th of May, 9th of May, and so on. Before drinking, he had wonderful children. For those to come, it will be very different. Children of alcohol, epileptic, degenerate, murderer. Here are the consequences of a daily glass of alcohol. Okay. To resist tuberculosis, let's be strong. The weak man can get tuberculosis even with medicines. The strong man resists easily. To be strong, do outdoor sports. circuit of alcohol. Alcohol can be obtained by distillation of wine, potatoes, etc. But it's easier to buy it at the bar. The circus of alcohol or the metamorphosis of coins. The effects of alcohol are very special. First, you're happy. You see, la vie en rose. Then, it narrows the street and made the streetlight dance. Drugs the keyholes. Then you fall asleep. Anesthesia sleep. It unties the purse and feel the asylum in the prisons. Alcoholic madness, not as fun as before. Real athlete only drink water. The German eagle defeated. We need to defeat tuberculosis too. The slum, the confined air, and the alcohol prepare its victim for tuberculosis. Hygiene transforms the slum and cures the illnesses. Intermission.
Okay, there is no intermission here, but it's an intermission for me because I will stop playing the piano. This is a sound film that was shot, I think, in 1931. It's a promotional trailer made by the Marx Brothers for a film called Horse, was it Monkey Business or Horse Feathers? I don't know. I think it was Monkey Business. The image of that film was found in America at the Library of Congress. The sound of that film was restored by Robert Bader on the West Coast. And it has nothing to do with France. Hell. Yes, it has to do with France. You know why? Because of Maurice Chevalier. Monkey Business trailer, 3 minutes.
name is Sandy Brown, and I just came into town. Saw your ad. You Mr. Lee, say you can make a hit on me.
What do you do?
Dance, sing.
Play a role?
Anything. Say I'm a fine for guys like you because there's nothing I can't do.
Tell me, what did you work before?
In a department store.
Who told you you could dance and sing?
Hey, for money I'll do anything. Why don't you try me? You might as well.
You might be great.
You can tell.
What do you call your specialty?
You mean my big sensation? I'm not on cold when I pull off my Chevalier imitation. If a nightingale will sing like you, they sing much better than they do, cause you brought a new kind of love to me. Well, what do you think?
When you go out, don't slam the door. It's a wonderful imitation you gave of Ethel Barrymore.
I'm glad you see me.
Step right in.
Are you Mr. Lee? My name is Sandy Brown.
Come in. Do you want to talk to me?
I want to talk to Mr. Lee.
I'm Mr. Lee.
I see you want to black?
Yes.
Well, I'm the guy you want to guess, and I'll speak very good English, but I'm full of the pep and I got the ambition.
What do you do?
Acrobats.
What's your name?
Remind you, what the best thing I do is give imitation of Chevalier. When the nightingale may look like you.
That's enough.
When you go out, don't slam the door. Well, what do you think?
I need a drink.
All right, I take a drink.
You take the air.
The air, he cried. Don't like the air. It's too cold outside.
Will you please keep quiet?
I know, say the word.
Not a man, the butler, and it. Not a word from you till you're spoken to.
All right, you great big stick. I want to speak to Mr. Lee. I'm the mitigator.
So I see I'm Mr. Lee.
Lend an ear to me.
Can you play a role?
Can I play a role? Do you know who you're looking at?
No.
Caesar's ghost. I play any kind of a role.
You will?
I'll eat it up like that. I played a part in Ben Hall once.
What part did you play, sir?
A girl, she played the part of Ben.
And you?
I played her. When you go out, make a slam at the door. You're kidding me, aren't you, not?
Kidding me, say. I've been here all day. Now show me what you got.
I want you to play a dramatic part, the kind that touches a woman's heart, will make her cry, for me to die. Did you ever get hit with a coconut pie? There's my argument. Restrict immigration. I think I'll recite.
Let it go, all right.
I'll give you a recitation. Or would you prefer to see me give my Chevalier imitation? When the nightingale could sing like you, they sing much sweeter than they do, cause you brought a new kind of love to me. Well, what do you think?
Get me a brick.
Here's the brick. I always carry one for this imitation. Hey, I'll lay this on your head. You can't do that. You don't belong to the bricklayer's union.
Hey, what do you think you are?
Hey, wait a minute. You know who this is?
No.
He sells Frankfurters. That's the margin of winners.
Well, what do you want? My name is What Do You Care? My home is anywhere. People say I'm awful dumb, so I thought to you I'd come. Say, listen, what do you start that?
Now, just a moment. Wait a minute. He might be crazy. Wait, I'll find out. You want to go on stage? Crazy.
Say, listen, you tell me what you want or I'll throw you. Never mind that. I'll give you a...
Now, wait, take your time. This fellow's a good dancer. Dance for him.
Say, thanks heaven there's no Chevalier in the
What do you think of him?
I need to give him $1 a week.
Not so loud, he'll take it.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you're making a big mistake. These fellas are very clever. They're funny fellas. And I got a play that I've written that I'd like to explain to you. I'd like to read this manuscript for you. If you want me to play it, these fellas will fit in it. Now, if you want to come over and sit down with me for a minute, I'll explain the whole thing to his manager. Now, when you sit down with this, this is not monkey business or is it pineapple, but I want to explain it. I want to explain the whole thing to you. Now, the first scene takes place in a beautiful home. Now, this is really a magnificent home. Imagine, when I got married, I mean, imagine. I saw a fellow like he's been going for many years. Now, he's been going for and the other boy says, if you just listen to what I've got to say,
That number was They made it for the first time in a stage play called I'll Say She Is, long before they started in the movies. So it was that little trailer was an opportunity to replay that little routine. Our next film, the last one, is called The Love Nest. It's a Buster Keaton film, American. His last short, but it was discovered in France. And a little bit in Prague. So France for the sharp parts, and there are a few short scenes that are really awful, including the very first shots that are really liney and absolutely ugly. So those come from the Czech Republic. It was a very, very bad. That's true. I'm not saying this against. Hey, come on. Okay, well, okay. Love Nest, 20 minutes, 1923, gorgeous film. Merci beaucoup, as we say in French. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the... I hope you enjoyed the... Gee, the glasses. Yeah. You mind if I add one more film? Okay. All right. Maybe some of you know what these glasses are for. Of course you do. Now let me tell you a little story that you will not believe, that will confirm more than ever that the collaboration between France and the United States adds a new dimension to cinema. In 1902, Georges Méliès films The Trip to the Moon. You know the moon with the rocket in the eye? Well, most of you know that film. The problem is that film is the film of all the records. It's the first, the longest film at the time, 13 minutes. It's the film that everyone wanted to see. It's a blockbuster. He makes fortunes with the film. Except that in the United States, the film also has the privilege of being the first to be massively pirated by an American pirate called Lubin. He bought a print, made a copy of it, and even in very, very bad quality, he stole the show and sold the print around the United States and made a fortune with it. So Georges Méliès had an idea. He couldn't stand the idea of being robbed of every production he would do so far until now. So what he decided to do was to open a shop in New York and market the films the same day on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, which basically is the same-day release throughout the world that we use today to avoid piracy. So Méliès did that. He sent his brother Gaston to the United States and sent, every time he would produce a film, he would produce a negative that he would send to America. And so the films would be released the same day. But the problem is that at the time, it was impossible to copy a negative with good quality. You would lose so much. You know, it's like a Xerox copy. Every time you Xerox a document, you lose some sharpness, you lose some gray, and after 2 or 3 copies, all you have is total white and total black. So Méliès thought that to keep the quality, he needed to do 2 original camera negatives at the same time. So he took 2 cameras, spliced them together, used the same crank for each film, but basically the crank would move 2 mechanisms through 2 different lenses side by side with 2 different, films. So basically he would film 2 original camera negatives at the same time. He was the only one to do that. And he sent one of the negatives in America and the other negative remained in France. As Monsieur l'Ambassadeur just said, in 1923, 13 years after being bankrupt, Méliès took all his negatives, the camera negatives, the best quality possible, the film that went through Méliès's camera, put them in his garden because there was no archive, and burned them because anyway, he was ejected from his house. And that was a terrible tragedy. The 520 negatives of his 520 films went up in smoke in a few minutes. And everyone thought, we will never see a film again from the camera negative of Georges Méliès. Well, when you think of it, but you needed to know that, there were another set of original camera negatives in America. So what happened to those negatives? Well, Gaston Méliès had a feud with his brother when the brother went bankrupt. In 1911, Gaston left for the West Coast and left his negative in the basement of his lawyer. And then he went to South America, and then he came back to France and died in 1915 of a strange disease. Nobody exactly know what he died from. Anyway, there is no more link between Georges Méliès, who doesn't know where the films are, and the films that are in the lawyer's basement. In 1921, a man called Leo Schlesinger, maybe some of you remember that name. Leo Schlesinger buys those negatives that are full of tricks and funny things, and he thinks, well, maybe I'm going to do something with those films. Probably got them for peanuts. And so he starts working on it. But nothing happens. Because in 1927, the jazz singer kills any prospect for silent film. Of course, the time for soundies and talking pictures has come. So those negatives that were with Schlesinger, where are they going to go? Well, Schlesinger decided to move from the business of buying and selling films to the business of producing animated cartoons. Leo Schlesinger is the name you can see under Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, a Leo Schlesinger production. So he was at Warner Bros. Producing Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, and so on. In 1949, he dies. And Warner Bros. Calls the widow and says, we have those stacks of films. We don't know what they are. They belong to your husband. What should we do with them? I don't know. Why don't you send them to the Motion Picture Academy? It's next door in Hollywood, and they probably will know what to do with it. The problem is that the Motion Picture Academy was not an archive at the time. So they started trying to copy the films. They were so badly damaged already that they ruined and destroyed part of some of them. And so they decided to stop. Then in the early 70s, those films were sent to the Library of Congress, where they had the same fate. They tried to copy whatever they could. On some occasions they could, but on most of the occasions, the films were turned to dust or shreds because they were so brittle that you could hardly wind them. They were really terribly going. And a few years ago, we decided with the Motion Picture the Motion Picture Academy, and most of all with the Library of Congress and the French National Center of Cinema and my company Lobster Films, to launch a plan to restore those 88 camera negatives of Georges Méliès. It just started. It'll take a long time and a lot of money. But those films will pop up one after the other, and we're committed to restore every single one of them. What you're going to see now is 2 of those films. But what I didn't tell you is that those 2 negatives are not identical. Of course, they are shot side by side. The 2 lenses are 10 centimeters, like, that distance, one from the other, about the same distance between your 2 eyes. Basically, by shooting those 2 negatives, Méliès had no clue and never found out that he was recording his films in stereoscopic 3D. And so that's a premiere. We're going to try to do that. On the right eye, we're going to show, the right eye will have the blue glass, and the left eye will be red. We're going to watch 2 Méliès films in stereoscopic 3D. They are not entirely stereoscopic 3D because the American negatives were a bit shortened. So you will see that the beginning and end of the first one, La Cornue Infernale, the mysterious retort, are flat. And for the second one, which is called the Magic Cauldron, the first half is flat, and the second half, the end, is in stereoscopic 3D, because that's where we have the other eye. So remember, that's a premiere. What you will see here was never intended to happen by Georges Méliès, and he had no possibility of projecting the films in stereoscopic 3D. But that's incidental stereoscopic filming is more than a miracle. It's a magic trick. And from Méliès, oh, by the way, this is Méliès's 160th anniversary today. So happy birthday, Georges. And here are 2 films by Méliès, The Mysterious Retort and The Magic Cauldron. Put on your glasses. Thank you, America. And thank you, France. We're great together. Merci. And now, Ryan, come with me. We have a 6-hour Q&A.
We need a mic. We're going to share a mic?
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay.
Oh, we don't have to share a mic. Hey, we don't have to share a mic. All right.
Okay. Well, it's an extremely hard act to follow, so I'm not going to try and do it. But I will pay you the very high compliment. Compare what Méliès was doing then 20, 25 years before what Buster Keaton was doing. Obviously, they were both great, but the level of innovation and creativity, and for you to bring that back to life for us, and not just to life, but to give us, just thank you.
Well, there's the thing. When we see those films, they are brand new to us. They have been there 100 years ago or 80 years ago. And of course, we show a selection of films. You must realize that today about maybe 90% of the films are terrible. Well, it was the same ratio at the time. So when we
making one a week, he was pumping these out at one a week.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
Yeah. So well, you remember the Looney Tunes? There were one cartoon a week also. So
now you've described yourself as a cinevore, obviously with a huge appetite. I wanted to get into a little bit of the motivations and the methods that you have in this part of the discussion.
Well, there is no method in a way. Well, there is a technical method to restore a film that's very academic, and it may seem easy. It is not. But the thing is that to find films, and of course that's the big issue, where to find films, you have to shoot at random. Because all the logical paths that lead to films, like the sons or grandsons of directors or the former film labs and so on, have been explored by all the archives.
Yeah. So hold it there for a second. You've been doing this for 35 years, and it's still random now.
Totally.
That's
the only way. That's the only way. The first film, Kalino, La Nuit Noce de Kalino. About 30 years ago, I was in Canada, and I met the owner of the film. He wanted $5 million for 150 films. So I said, that's crazy. I called the National Archive, and they said, oh, we know him. He wants $5 million. And if you say yes to $5 million, he will want 10. So don't even bother. I did not even bother. And then I waited 30 years, and... time flies by itself. You don't have to. And then one day I saw on eBay that a woman by the same name was selling films. So I called and said, "You have nitrate films. What do you want to do with them?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, I'm going to buy them all." And I sent her a check, and she said,
"How much was on that check?"
I can tell you that it was actually exactly $8,000. But I must also say that in the collection was one complete feature film that belonged to a big studio, and I sold that feature film to the big studio for $8,000.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, it didn't cost me a dime. Then I donated the films to the Library of Congress, and at the end of the day, I had nothing, but the world had 150 films back.
Yeah. I'm going to get you to do my next salary negotiation, Serge. Now, tell us a little bit about the race against time to save some of these films. You told us the statistic that up to 90% of them are already gone, and now they're literally falling apart.
Yeah, a film print survives about 100 years. It can be less. For example, the negative of Children of Paradise, which is in the mid-40s, is totally decomposed because it was printed at the time when they had to save on chemicals and they had no time for drying the films and so on. So that's terrible. But and of course, that negative was badly stored. But the films, the Lumière films, were printed properly. And when they went out of business, the films were put under the roof of the City Hall of Lyon, where they remained at a constant temperature, no heat, no real humidity. So at the end of the day, most of those films are still with us today. So it's difficult to say. You never know how the films were stored and when they are going to decay. But it's the one thing for sure is that you should not retain films at your home because they will decay one way or another at some point. You may take the films, put them on the shelf, come back 2 years later, and there will be nothing left in the can. And that's terrible. You know, I had a story like this. We were working on the Trip to the Moon, the color print of Trip to the Moon that was found in Barcelona. And the end of Trip to the Moon, the last scene, half of the tableau is missing. And one day a woman calls and say, I have a film that I would like to sell. Can I come to you? And, of course. So she arrives at the office and she has that can of film that is all decomposed except the middle. And I said, well, why is it all white and decomposed? She said, well, that's because I saw it was gluey, so I put it on the ceiling, but it was a heat wave. It was in a 2003. So basically she heated the print. But in the middle, she had put another can of film on the top. So the center was still there. And I took the center and I watched, and it was the end of the last tableau. So yes, I had it. And I said, well, how much do you want? I want $50,000. Okay, I don't have that money. It makes no sense. I offer you $1,000, and believe me, it's not a generous offer. It's totally crazy because it's only a part of the film, but I need it. She said, well, I don't know. I'm going to think about it. And I gave her the name of all the archives that I knew in France so that she would call and realize that I was actually offering her something significant. So, and she goes without leaving me her name or a phone number. And I thought, okay, that's it. It's gone.
Did you forget to ask, or she just ran out the door?
No. She deliberately didn't want to give me her name. Okay. Oh, that's rule number one. Ask for the phone number and the name. So you can call back until and 1 month later, she calls back and says, well, I've asked everyone. Nobody's interested. So, I'm game to. I'll sell you the print. So she comes back, and I had prepared the bills, and she takes the film out of the can, and it's all white from the first to the last image, and the second part of the last tableau is still missing today.
Oh, wow! You got to laugh.
What can you do? You know.
Well, you've waited long enough for these other parts of these films. Another copy is going to turn up at some point.
Yeah,
somehow.
As we say in France, il n'y a pas de film perdu, il n'y a que des gens mal informés. So there's no lost films, it's just people who are ignorant or who don't know where to find the films. So, I keep hoping. Anyway, the secret of happiness is not to have what you want, it's to want what you have. So if I have 95% of a film, I'm happy with it. You know, I'd rather have 100, but you know, Kalino, Les Nuits de Noces de Kalino, I had 0. And if George Williman from the Library of Congress hadn't called me and said, I think you found a crazy film, I would never have known about it because the print was, you know, I live in Paris, so the print was 10,000 kilometers from me. It's a very international sport.
And this... and I get the sense that there are pieces that you find all around the world, and eventually that.
Well, it's not that I find. Actually, most of these films have been assembling from different archives, different collectors. We all know each other. We like to. I'm the one who's promoting them. I'm the one who's playing the piano and doing those shows. But you must realize that I'm only the face. But besides, there's an entire system. Without the National Center of Cinema, those Méliès negatives would not be scanned in 8K, which is better than Lawrence of Arabia or Star Wars, but they deserve it. And so
and that search for the Méliès films, it's been going on for 95 years, really, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and we still have only 230 films out of his 520. My guess is that the best films are found because, of course, the best films are the ones that are the most marketed, that were distributed the more widely. So the chances of finding a print abandoned somewhere are higher. And as the, you know, in the very first years of Méliès, those one reel films, the first year he made 100 films where he did like Lumière. He would film the opera, the blah, blah, blah. And it's totally anonymous. You couldn't know it is Méliès stuff. We found 2 Méliès films in a little projector in 21 millimeter, which is a system that never existed except for a few months. And the guy who designed that was Rolos. He was the brother-in-law of Méliès. And he said, well, I have no film to show. And Georges, can you film films for me? So we found 2 prints in 21 millimeter. That's crazy.
Now, what really struck me from watching all of those films and doing a bit of research before as well is the constant circulation of ideas and money and collaboration between France and the United States.
Yeah.
Having looked at it for 35 years now, what does it tell you about the relationship between the two countries?
Well, that tells me that we need each other on many, many occasions. And I think it's not one that wins above the other. There's not a big one and a small one. You know, we all need, the shark needs a little poisson pilote, like, I don't know how you call that, but the guide fish. I've always had that very strong and sincere friendship and relationship with the United States. I have a lab here. I have a company in America and a company in France. And I think it's a very strong structure. We have the same way of thinking. So it's like in a family. There may be feuds, but we're in the same family.
Absolutely. I think we can do a round of applause for that. It's always dangerous to stand between people and their drinks, so we might not keep it going too much longer. But given that history that we've just spoken about, it feels like there's a lot more work that can be done, that film is going to crumble pretty quickly if we don't get the last batch. So what's next?
There's a lot to be done. There's a lot of, I must admit, there's a lot of financing to be found because those plans cost literally fortunes. I mean, you cannot imagine how expensive it is to restore a film. And the paradox is that you know that a restoration is a success when you don't see a film is restored. So it's hard to claim, see how we work because that film is in perfect condition. And people say, well, it probably was in perfect condition in the first place. So it's difficult to explain, but
you need to do before and afters.
I could do that. I've done that many times. Next time I'm here, I'll do before and afters. I promise.
The late night show. We'll go to 2 a.m. Serge Bromberg, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone. Good night, and remember, if you have this, someone you want to speak. Now, if you have films, if you know people who have films, call the Library of Congress. Or call here. They will know what to do with those prints. They are precious. They may be unique. There are lost films of Charlie Chaplin, Jean Renoir, Ozu, Lubitsch, Murnau. I mean, all those guys deserve that we spend some time digging for old rusty cans. So please call. Thank you.
And leave your name and number if you've got a donation to make.
Bye.